Okay, so you know that feeling, that constant hum of notifications, the to-do list that just seems to stretch on forever, that sense of being pulled in like a million different directions at once. We all feel it, don't we? It really does feel like this age of noise. And finding real clarity, that sharp focus, it feels, well, incredibly rare sometimes. But what if cutting through all that clutter wasn't just about, managing your time better? What if it was more fundamental, like rediscovering your actual purpose? Today, we're doing a deep dive into Reuben Juma Onunga's book, Signal Over Noise, The Discipline of Focus in a Distracted Age. And this isn't just like another productivity hack book. It feels much deeper. It actually comes from Onunga's own journey, his struggles with mental health, and this real search for meaning. So it offers this path to living more intentionally. Our mission today for you is to really pull out the key bits of wisdom from Onunga's work. We want to explore how you can cut through all that stuff, the digital noise, the emotional static, the mental clutter, to find what really matters, your signal. We'll look at insights from people like Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, mix it with some timeless ideas, all to help you sort of reclaim your focus and, yeah, your purpose. So maybe let's start there. Onunga really kicks things off by redefining noise, doesn't he?
He absolutely does, and I think that's critical. We tend to think noise is just, loud sounds and maybe your phone pinging constantly. But his definition is much broader and maybe a bit more insidious, actually. He talks about noise as this clutter on multiple levels: mental, emotional, digital, even spiritual. It's that storm of unfiltered notification, sure, but it's also all these competing priorities pulling at you. And that pressure, that unspoken thing to always be on, always available. Plus, maybe most importantly, all that internal chatter, the stuff that stops you from really thinking deeply. It's that feeling of being super busy, looking active, but not actually achieving anything meaningful because your energy is just scattered.
That really hits home. It's a stark picture he paints. And it makes you wonder, doesn't it? Is this massive amount of noise just a problem? Or, like Onunga suggests, maybe it's also an opportunity for those who can find the signal. He really hammers home that we are probably, without question, living in the noisiest time ever. We're constantly stimulated, bombarded with information, but maybe under-inspired. Connected to literally everyone through our devices, but sometimes feeling anchored to, well, nothing solid. The issue isn't a lack of information anymore, right? He argues it's a lack of clarity. Like, how do we make sense of it all and act?
That's such a powerful point he makes. And one of the most compelling parts of his argument is that a lot of this noise isn't some accident. It's actually designed. You have these huge billion-dollar companies engineering algorithms specifically to capture and hold our attention. Think about social media. It's not a neutral town square, is it? It's more like a machine built for addiction. Every notification, every swipe, it's all carefully crafted to give you that little dopamine hit, keeping you hooked. It's not just stealing our minutes and hours. It's like fundamentally rewiring our brains, training us to prefer the shallow, the quick hit, making deep, focused work feel almost uncomfortable. It reminds me of that Elon Musk quote, maybe a bit provocative, but he said, "We're already cyborgs. We're just a little bandwidth constrained." Our attention really has become the prime commodity.
Wow. Bandwidth constraint. Yeah. And he doesn't just leave it at the external stuff, the tech and all that. He turns the focus inward too, which I think is brilliant. Onunga really highlights the huge amount of inner noise we all wrestle with. That constant comparing yourself to others when you're scrolling through their, perfect looking lives online.
Yeah.
The anxiety that can paralyze you when you overthink things, or perfectionism, that thing that stops you from even starting. People pleasing too, that erodes who you really are, and maybe the loudest one of all, fear. Fear of missing out, fear of failing, fear of just not being good enough. These aren't just fleeting thoughts. He argues they're active, powerful distractions.
Absolutely. And the cost, the real cost of all this noise, internal and external, it's profound. It goes way beyond just feeling tired or burnt out. Onunga makes the case that it's actually the loss of greatness, potential greatness anyway. Just think about the examples he brings up, the sort of silent tragedies. How many amazing books never got written because the author was just constantly pulled away by digital noise? How many potentially world-changing ideas died because the creator was too scattered, lost in that mental fog? And even families, right? How many suffer because real present connection gets replaced by just being preoccupied all the time? He puts it so strong. He calls noise an assassin of focus, a thief of clarity, a destroyer of destiny. It's not just annoying, it's an enemy of our best work, our deepest connections, our potential.
Okay, assassin of focus. That's powerful. So if noise is the enemy, then signal is Onunga's answer. It's the solution.
Right.
What does that actually mean for us? How does he define signal?
Yeah, signal is basically clarity. It's purpose. It's identifying what is truly essential, what's strategic, what's genuinely impactful. It's figuring out
those few core things that if you do them really well with excellence, they actually
Right.
move the needle forward in your life, in your
Yeah.
work. It's not about cramming more in. It's about focusing on what truly matters and doing that with like laser focus.
Right, doing what matters most. And to make this concrete, he uses that great story about Steve Jobs coming back to Apple in '97. Remember, the company was apparently a mess, bloated, unfocused, just drowning in too many products, too many projects. So Jobs walks into this product strategy meeting, grabs a marker, and draws a super simple 2x2 grid on the whiteboard, 4 boxes: consumer, pro, desktop, portable. And he just declares basically, we're going to focus on 4 products, that's it. Everything else, gone. That decision, that ruthless cut through all the noise to find the signal, well, that led to the iMac, the iPod, eventually the iPhone. Incredible.
Exactly. And it wasn't just about making things look simpler. That famous Jobs quote, simple can be harder than complex. You have to work hard to get your thinking clean to make it simple. That really nails it, doesn't it? It gets to the heart of signal thinking. It was this philosophy of relentless subtraction, just stripping away everything that wasn't absolutely essential until only the core truth remained. That's how you get something like the original iPhone with just one main button, a masterclass in focused design, focused user experience.
So simplicity wasn't just like an aesthetic preference for him. It was a strategy, a really profound act of clarity that came from deep, hard thinking, not just making things look minimal. It was about cognitive rigor, paring complexity down to its most powerful form.
Okay, so Jobs showed us ruthless subtraction. But then Onunga brings in Elon Musk, who kind of embodies a different flavor of signal focus, maybe more like relentless reinvention. He paints Musk as someone who doesn't just eliminate distractions, he practically incinerates them, as Onunga puts it. Musk seems totally obsessed with building the future he envisions, not just looking busy or playing a game. He's another powerful example of prioritizing that signal.
Yeah, and what's particularly insightful is how Musk's approach often comes from first principles thinking. Have you heard him talk about this? Instead of just looking at how things have always been done, reasoning by analogy, he breaks problems down to their absolute fundamental truths. It's about consciously unlearning the assumptions, peeling back all the layers of, well, this is how we do it, to ask, what are the physics of the situation? What's undeniably true? Like with the rockets. He didn't just accept that rockets are incredibly expensive. He questioned why. He realized the huge cost wasn't mostly the raw materials. It was all the markups and inefficiencies in the existing supply chain. So based on the first principle, the actual cost of materials, he figured, okay, we can build them ourselves much cheaper. It's not just problem solving, it's a whole different way of seeing the world. It lets you bypass all the conventional noise and innovate from like a clean sheet. And he lives by that idea. If something is important enough, even if the odds are against you, you should still do it. That is his signal driving him. And you see this ruthless prioritization in his day-to-day too. It's not just theory. Scheduling his day in 5-minute blocks, apparently. Really short meetings. Filtering his email like crazy to only deal with the absolute must-dos. You're probably not going to find him stuck in endless committee meetings about strategy alignment. You might find him on the factory floor at 3 a.m. fixing a production problem. Onunga makes the point that this isn't about being superhuman, it's a deliberate choice. A choice to compress learning and progress by just eliminating friction and resisting distraction relentlessly, all driven by that incredibly clear signal.
Okay, these are huge examples, Jobs and Musk. So how do we bring this down to us, to you listening? What is your signal? Oninga really pushes this. He says your signal isn't just another to-do list. It's more like a why-do list. It's the core driver, the purpose underneath it all that helps you cut through everything else. But, I mean, how do you even start to figure that out?
Well, he brings in that timeless wisdom, like from Proverbs. Without a vision, the people perish. Your life needs that vision, that signal. And he suggests using what he calls questions that clarify. Things like, okay, realistically, what are the top, say, 3 things that deeply, genuinely matter to me? Or what am I uniquely gifted or positioned to do that actually adds value? And maybe the big one, what do I want my legacy to be? What do I want to be remembered for when all's said and done? Now, these aren't easy questions, right? The answers might even change over time, but just the act of asking them starts to bring clarity. And he really stresses writing it down. Make your signal concrete. Put it somewhere visible. Revisit it often. Because clarity isn't permanent. It can fade if you don't reinforce it. And crucially, he warns about false signals. Those things that seem like good opportunities, maybe they're good for someone, but they're not actually part of your mission. They become noise for you. The real discipline is telling the difference between just good and what's truly aligned with your purpose.
That leads perfectly into the next part, because this is where, honestly, it gets really interesting and maybe really hard. Protecting that signal. It requires what Onunga calls this essential skill, saying no without apology. And let's be real, most of us struggle with this, don't we? We lack strong boundaries. We say yes because we feel guilty, or we're afraid of conflict, or we just want people to like us. But he points out, every time you say yes to something that's not aligned with your signal, you're automatically saying no to something that is important. It's like this slow, silent erosion of your purpose.
Exactly. Steve Jobs nailed this too. He said something like, and I'm paraphrasing, people think focus is about saying yes to the one thing you need to focus on, but that's not it at all. It means saying no to the 100 other good ideas, unquote. Onunga teaches that no can be, and often should be, a complete sentence. You don't always need a long explanation or excuse. Saying no isn't being rude, it's a powerful tool. It creates the space, the bandwidth, the energy for what truly matters to you. It's an act of self-preservation, really. And the practical tip he gives is brilliant. Practice the pause. Before you automatically say yes, just pause for a second. Ask yourself, does this actually align with my core mission, my signal? Or am I leaning towards yes out of guilt, obligation, maybe fear? That tiny pause, that moment of reflection can be the difference between a choice driven by your signal and just a reaction driven by noise.
Okay, saying no is huge. Then Onunga dives into what he calls the digital battle, the battle for our attention, which he argues is like the most valuable resource we have in the 21st century. He makes the point that our attention is like a muscle. It can be trained, strengthened, or it can be weakened. And when we're constantly multitasking, jumping between emails and notifications and that quick scroll through social media, we're basically training our brain for distraction. We're weakening its ability to hold deep, sustained focus. That's a really critical point, especially for an audience like ours that understands the value of deep work.
It really is. And to fight back, to reclaim that attention, Onunga offers some very practical steps. He frames them not as like harsh restrictions, but as acts of taking back control, acts of self-reclamation. First, he suggests the digital sunrise and sunset rule. Basically, no screens for the first 30 minutes after you wake up and the last 30 minutes before you sleep. He argues this isn't just about avoiding blue light for sleep. It's a powerful way to protect your most mentally open states from being immediately hijacked by outside input. It lets your own thoughts surface first. Second, this idea of one app, one purpose. Like remove those super addictive apps from your main phone screen. Make it harder to just habitually unconsciously open them. Third, batch notifications. Turn off almost all alerts. Check things intentionally on your schedule instead of letting every little ping fragment your focus and pull you out of what you're doing. Fourth, create sacred spaces. Phone-free zones, maybe during meals, definitely in important meetings, perhaps during your morning routine. Protect those moments for real presence. And finally, actually use those time limiters on apps. Onunga says this isn't just about restriction. It's about actively reprogramming your brain's dopamine response. You're taking back control from the algorithms. And if you connect this to the bigger picture, like he does, it's not just about getting more done. It's about protecting time with loved ones, allowing space for creative ideas to spark, making room for intuition or guidance. Technology should serve your mission, he says, not steal it.
I love that framing: technology serving your mission, not stealing it. Okay, so we've got saying no, we've got reclaiming digital attention. What's the final discipline he highlights? In a world that seems addicted to constant motion, constant hustle, Onunga presents the power of stillness almost as an act of rebellion. He describes stillness not as passive or lazy, but as active clarity. It's creating that sacred space where all the noise just falls away and your signal, your inner voice, can become incredibly clear. It's where truth can be heard, where intuition bubbles up, where your purpose gets reaffirmed.
Yeah, and we see this pattern again and again, don't we? Both historically and with modern figures. Steve Jobs used to take long walks, sometimes barefoot apparently, just to think, using nature and movement to find mental stillness. Elon Musk carves out that quiet time for his first principles thinking, deliberately shutting out distractions to get to the core. And even going way back, think about Jesus often withdrawing to lonely places to pray, as it says in Luke. Understanding that profound need for separation, for quiet, to gain clarity and direction. It really makes you ask, doesn't it? How often do we actually allow ourselves that kind of space in our incredibly noisy lives? Onunga gives practical ways to cultivate it. Maybe starting the day with just 5 minutes of silence, setting aside time for daily reflection, perhaps a weekly digital Sabbath a day or part of a day offline, walks in nature without your phone, even just consciously creating silent pockets in your morning or evening. Stillness, he argues, isn't empty. It builds emotional strength, it builds mental clarity, it deepens your spiritual connection. It's where you can recalibrate your inner compass and really hear your own signal above the constant din.
Recalibrate your inner compass. I like that. Okay, so as we start to wrap up this deep dive, maybe it's a good moment for everyone listening to just reflect on what we've unpacked today from Inklanging. Reuben Juma Onunga's Signal Over Noise. His core message seems incredibly clear. Living a signal-driven life isn't just about working harder or putting in more effort. It's about intentionality. You don't necessarily need a louder voice in the world. You need a clearer message rooted in your signal. You don't necessarily need more hours in the day. You need more focus within the hours you have. You don't need to do everything. You need to do what truly matters most and do it with that profound clarity he talks about.
Exactly. And maybe the final thought to leave you with, something that really echoes Onunga's deeper message, is this. The world right now feels like it's starving for real signal, for truth, for depth, for genuine direction amidst all the chaos. And that, Onunga suggests, is your invitation, your challenge perhaps. He says, be rare. Be someone whose life becomes a compass for others, not because you were the loudest, but because you were the clearest. May your legacy not be defined by how loud you were, but by how clearly you lived. That's a powerful call to action, isn't it?